Howdy folks, welcome back to Boondockery. Today I'm officially starting off my series on vintage, old school USGI surplus, aka stuff I did, stuff I wore, stuff I used when I was in the United States Army. Today's video is going to focus on the clothing I wore and my load-bearing equipment. When I entered the Army in the early 1980s, it was an Army in transition. They were metamorphosizing into something different, something bigger, something better, something new. They were transitioning to Kevlar helmets, Kevlar body armor, M16A2s, Beretta 9mm pistols, the M2, M3 Bradley fighting vehicle, the M1 tank, and Humvees, and all kinds of other stuff. I didn't get any of that. I didn't get any of it. As a matter of fact, about the only thing that I had, which was the same, was the basic LBE and the basic M81 woodland camouflage uniform. And when I was in, the M16A1 still had 45s. As a matter of fact, my 45 was manufactured in 1941, I believe, and it was made by Ithaca. And so I had a World War II M1911 as one of my issued firearms. It was old as dirt, and I still was able to qualify expert with it. I had a steel helmet. I had pup tents. I had the M113 armor personnel carrier. As a matter of fact, when I first got to my unit, D10 Cav, part of the 194th Armor Brigade, we still had the old school tow vehicles. So it was an M113 armor personnel carrier with a bigger hatch and a platform that lifted up and a tow launcher, just like the ones that is ground mounted, except it was a pintle on that platform, and that was our tow vehicle. Before I got out, we transitioned to the improved tow vehicle, which had a hammerhead. Sounds cool, doesn't it? It was really top heavy. You had to really watch how you drove or you go rolling down the hill. We had M60A3 tanks. Everyone around Fort Knox, that was definitely M1 tankers. They called it the dinosaur because it was huge and it was old. So I had a different experience than a good portion of the people that entered the same time I did. I took the old school route. They took the path into the future. So what I'm going to start off with is I'm going to go ahead and go over real quick what I'm wearing. I'm going to take off the LBE so I can go over that in detail. And then I'm going to talk more about the uniforms and my rifle. The clothing I'm wearing is referred to as a BDU, Battle Dress Uniform. The first uniform I was issued was a poplin cotton material. It was pretty heavyweight. It was fantastic for winter months, but during the summer it was ridiculously hot. So in 1984, the Army decided they were going to issue a old, tried and true uniform for us to be able to wear in the warmer months, called the hot weather uniform, which is made of a poly cotton nylon blend called ripstop. That's what I'm wearing right now. The original uniform I had, not only was it made of a much heavier weight type of material, it also had these great big huge honking Elvis Presley collars. And I remember all the guys, when we got these things, it was like all they could do is talk about how much better the collars were on this than the older uniforms. But the pattern is called the M81 Woodland pattern, and I'm certain that everyone has seen this, and now it has made a very popular comeback. It's become quite trendy to get all of your gear custom made in M81 Woodland, and which is sort of ironic because I spent years and years selling off all of my old stuff in order to be able to afford to purchase all the brand new multicam stuff that was coming out. And looking back at it now, I was an absolute idiot. After, playing with this stuff again in the woods, this stuff is absolutely fantastic. And yeah, it has its drawbacks, but it's still top quality stuff. And especially for traveling through the woods long distance, it's incredibly comfortable with a few modifications, and it works. It still works after all this time. I'm quite certain if I had a complete kit from World War II, that it would probably still be completely valid and viable in the woods in a tactical use today. But it all depends on how much practice you have with it. Now, it consists of a pair of trousers and a blouse. I'll talk more about that once I get the LBE off. And I'm wearing a boonie hat. I was issued patrol caps. We were never issued boonie hats. As a matter of fact, we weren't officially authorized to wear boonie hats, but the scouts always did when we were in the woods. We always had them with us. And when we went out, this, with some foliage in it, or some pieces of camo net, made our silhouette much less recognizable than the patrol cap. Matter of fact, I don't even own a patrol cap anymore. So, if I happen to find a real, original one at a halfway decent price in my size, I'm definitely going to order at least one, if nothing else, just for nostalgia's sake. Now, the LBE, which is load bearing equipment, part of the Alice system, which is all-purpose, lightweight, individual carrying equipment. The thing that sets this apart from its predecessor is the manner in which the pouches are attached, and also this particular one is all nylon. A lot of the earlier stuff that they used throughout most of the Vietnam War was cotton canvas, and those extreme humid wet conditions was absolutely murder on that type of equipment. And it doesn't matter what time of year it is, this stuff will hold up much better than cotton depending on the environment. The only thing I could see is the plastic bits that are on this. If it was extreme cold weather like sub-zero, I could very easily see a lot of these plastic bits breaking when you're trying to flex them to open them up or to close them. But other than that, they're pretty good to go. The way I have mine configured, I'll walk through it real quick, but I'll walk it through in detail in just a second. I have 2 magazine pouches, 6 magazines total in here. I have a compass pouch, which is also a first aid pouch. I have 2 more M16 magazine pouches that I use for general purpose items. And when I was in the Army, I always had a camera in one, and I had a whole bunch of personal items in the other. And then I have 2 canteens with canteen cups, canteens, water purification taps, things like that. This is not the configuration that I was authorized to use when I was in the Army. Matter of fact, most of this is very different from what I used when I was in the Army, because when I got out of the Army, I saw the shortcomings of it, and I modified these things like you wouldn't believe to fit my needs post-military service. And I had a really, really good one. Really good one. And I wound up selling the whole rig. I made a pretty penny off of it for the time, but I really regret that. So I happened to find some of the other bits and pieces that I had not sold. I made a facsimile of that, which is what I'm wearing, but I still got a ways to go to tweak it to the point that I had the other one. If you notice, I was not wearing a butt pack. Now, when I was going through basic training, all the scouts trained in the same training brigade as all of the tankers. It was 1st Armored Training Brigade at Fort Knox, Kentucky. All of the tankers were issued butt packs. All of the scouts were issued rucksacks. And so we were sort of conditioned to not do anything like, let's see, I can't put it delicately, a DAT. And that's another thing. They always try to instill this sense of rivalry. And so, you know, tankers are always referred to as DATs. We were referred to as crunchies, and our vehicle is referred to as a cracker box and things like that. So it was a, you know, when I was in the cavalry troop, we were all together. So, you know, we had some lighthearted exchanges, things like that, but we knew that we absolutely 100% depended on each other equally. So that was a fantastic team, being able to do that. And so all of those things that you were conditioned through basic training sort of went out the window because we had to work together, and we had to do so somewhat nicely. The original poplin uniform that I was issued was for the most part the same configuration as the hot weather BDUs. The trousers all had a cargo pocket on either leg. They had front pockets and they had back pockets. The cargo pockets and the back pockets had a 2-button closure. The fly in the front is a 5-button fly. And a lot of people, oh, I hate fly button. And this is, no. When you have a button fly, if you have a button that comes loose, you can fix it. If you have a zipper fly and it gets messed up, you're out there walking with your dork in the breeze, and there's nothing you can do to fix it until you get back to base and you buy a new pair. Okay, so buttons are fantastic. The blouse comes with 2 lower pockets, both 2-button, 2 chest pockets, both button. There are multiple buttons to cinch up your cuffs, as well as to button them to where the little tab with the buttonhole stays in place. There is a small pocket inside the left chest pocket, and there is an access point right here in the top. You see my finger go through there. We all put ink pens in it, and we carried our memorandum book, and it was basically a notebook, but they were green and they had memorandum in cursive written right on them. This pocket was never designed for an ink pen. It was designed for a small pen-like device that had a viewport in one side, and the interior was self-luminous. And what that was designed to be is something that you can look through it, and it measures the amount of radiation in the atmosphere where you are. And there's a little gauge in it, and it would show you how many rads you were being exposed to. There was one of the areas I trained in New Mexico, and we were in an area which is much higher in radiation than what we normally should be. It still wasn't considered dangerous, but I had never been anywhere to where the rads that I was exposed to were that high. And they stopped doing this after a while. This is an older uniform. This wasn't one that I wore. This is a large one. It was given to me by a friend that, got really large, and they couldn't wear them anymore. So they gave me all their old BDUs. The hot weather also had a button tab and a couple buttons here, so you could button them to where they look much more dashing when you're wearing them. Other than that, I don't really know what the purpose of those buttons were. The boonie hat is a fantastic, tried and true piece of clothing. They came out with them during Vietnam, but I think that this actually throwback all the way to World War II, because there was a similar hat worn by both the Marine Corps and the United States Army in the tropical regions, and it's just a variation of that. I'm wearing a rag on my head. We called it a do-rag. I never once questioned as to why they call it a do-rag. Well, I guess it's a thing. And so I looked it up, and the experts, which I don't know if they were ever in the military or not, they have two definitions for this. One of which, the do-rag is to protect your hairdo. The other do-rag, which the first one was spelled D-O-R-A-G. The second one is spelled D-E-W-R-A-G, like dew in the morning. The do-rag there is to absorb sweat. And if I had to choose one or the other, I used it as a D-E-W rag because it helped keep sweat out of my eyes when I was wearing anything. I wore it underneath my steel helmet. Any place I went, and we trained in areas that had a lot of dust. And it's a whole lot nicer not to have all the dust on your actual scalp, running down through the sweat, burning your eyes even more than sweat normally does. And normally you had the patrol cap, and the patrol cap had a nice little pocket on the inside for maps or other important documents that you need to keep hidden away. So this is the basic battle dress uniform. There are a couple things about the wearing of the BDU I want to share with you. Now, in the Army, you just can't wear your trousers with the cuffs of your trousers hanging loose down around your ankles. And you have to blouse them. And blousing them is basically getting them up and away from your boot. And I don't know exactly where the tradition started or what the purpose of it's for, but hey, that's what we had to do, so that's the way we did it. The first way is this way, and essentially you put your boot on and you lace it up, tie it, and then you either use blousing rubbers, you use tape, whatever, and you can also use the ribbon that is down at the very bottom of the pant leg, and you tie that good and tight at the very top of your boot, and then you pull that down and drape it. That is the regular way of blousing your boots. This leg is bloused the way that we did it when I was in the cavalry. We call it the calf blouse. To blouse your boots with the calf blouse, you can either just use just the friction of the boot around your trouser bottom, or what I did when I was in garrison, I used masking tape. And you pull it down, pull it good and tight out to the side, and tuck it in and wrap it. So it looks like that. Then you slide it into your boot. Tie your boot up good and tight around that. And you're going to get a better blouse if you are not elevating your foot and leg to tie it. And of course, in the Army, you can't have your shoelaces popping out and dangling like normal people. You have to tuck them in. And these boots aren't exactly designed for that. I don't know if that's a thing now or not. We had black combat boots, leather, and in the field I had a pair of jungle boots, and I still have the jungle boots, but they no longer fit. When I was in the Army, I wore size 9 wide. Now I wear a size 10.5. Now, in the military when I was in, there was no short sleeve combat shirts. No short sleeve BDU shirts. So you're wearing long sleeves, it's hot outside, what do? Well, you roll your sleeves up. Now, the United States Marine Corps, they haven't got time to be messing around with making this stuff look pretty. They literally just rolled their sleeves up, and that worked perfectly fine for them and is very indicative to the look of the United States Marine. Well, the Army, they're different. Let me show you how the United States Army rolls their sleeves. I'm going to go and correct myself. This is the way the United States Army used to roll their sleeves up. I don't know if you've ever seen too many of the newer designs of uniforms. It's virtually impossible to roll your sleeves up. You can roll up to a certain point. There's pockets everywhere. There's Velcro everywhere. There's great big huge pockets up here on the sleeves. There's pockets here for pins or whatever. I don't know what they're originally designed for, but they're all over the place, so you can't really roll your sleeves up. Now, first thing is I want to go ahead and move this into a position that I can get to it and you can see it. You'll notice that there is this great big reinforced elbow pad area. It's right here. What you're going to do is make certain that your sleeve is unbuttoned, your cuff. Move your hand up and you're going to pinch right there at the top of that reinforced area. And you are going to turn that sleeve inside out, holding onto that pinched area, and you're going to pull that sleeve all the way up, all the way around to where it's nice, neat, and even. Now, the sleeve pattern is asymmetrical, so you just have to pull and tuck and flatten it out the best you can, because as you can see, it's not going to be perfectly rounded. Now, once you have that, you are going to fold the bottom edge up to the line of that reinforcement. And you're going to tuck it and make sure it's all nice and even there. I've never rolled my sleeves sideways before. This is interesting. Now, once you have that done, you're going to take the cuff and you are going to fold that back down over the area you just folded. Dress it up. And you can either button that button now or wait till you put it on. Do the same thing to the other side. Now, when you start to put this thing on, this is going to feel really weird because it's going to be very, very tight. And you're going to want to nurse these up here. Buttons are vastly superior to Velcro or zippers. Now, here we go. See? They look pretty slick, you got to admit. And if you know, a situation occurs to where you need to unroll your sleeves, well, you don't have to worry about taking your shirt off and undoing it the way that you did it. All you do is you grab the bottom of the cuff and you just pull, and you have a rapid deploy long sleeves ready to hit the woods. Now, as a Cav Scout, there's a lot of different types of patrols that you do for reconnaissance. And for just about all of them, the equipment and the clothing I just showed you work perfectly fine. However, when you're going to do a reconnaissance on an enemy position, a known enemy position, and you want to try to get in as deep as you possibly can, you can't have all that stuff. So we all would tuck our uniforms in. We would tie 550 cord around any part of our uniform which is baggy. We would not wear any type of patrol caps, do-rags, full camo completely. We would button this top button, we'd pull our collar up, and we just wanted to be as streamlined as possible. And I would wear my 45 with a shoulder holster on underneath my shirt. I would have a pair of wire cutters in my cargo pocket, and my cargo pocket was tied close around my thigh. I would have my notebook, pen. We would have like a red pen light with us, and we made our own pen lights because they had literally, they looked like ink pens, but they were lights, little flashlights, and we glued the red filter lens that, you know, we cut a smaller version off of our angle head flashlights, and we glued it on there so we would have that. But we would not be taking that thing out at all once we get close to the position. We'd have a map, and so what we were going to be doing is we were going to try to get in as close as we possibly can. So we want everything streamlined. If we need to go through wire, if we need to wiggle in through small spaces and things like that, which, believe it or not, I was small enough to at the time, you didn't want anything snagging on anything. So that was pretty good. However, when you tuck your regular BDU blouse in, you've completely lost use of those pockets. And sometimes if you can gather some things and stick in your pockets that's not on your thighs, that are not, you know, the cargo pockets, because when you're maneuvering, even when you tie them down, they do shift back and forth. You've sort of lost that ability to be able to carry extra things in with you, or to store things as you gather them. So I took a BDU shirt apart. I'll move in a little closer so you can see this. And I remove the top two chest pockets, and I switched them. So where the bellow is normally on this side, the bellow now is here, so it will rest whatever you put in it and nest it, and it won't fall out. And I angled them so I could very easily get in them, and these were very close to the same type of design idea as my jungle fatigues that I'll do another video about here later, that were OD. And so we have this, and I took the cargo pockets, or the larger pockets that were down here, and I actually sewed them underneath my arm. So I can put, you know, quite a few things here, and to be able to keep those close to my body. And I have that added storage here as well. And so this wound up being the last little thing that I got to play with when I was in. And everyone that I showed it to just thought it was the berries. And a couple of the guys tried to do it themselves. They did okay. And a couple guys actually took a blouse to the local seamstress there right off of Fort Knox and had theirs done as well. But who knows? I could have made $1 million off of these things. But this worked out very, very well for those deep probing reconnaissance ops that I got a chance to do. This load-bearing equipment harness, the LBE, is not at all like I was issued. All the same component parts, but I assembled this probably in the early 90s, and during the early 90s everything that the Army was producing was festooned with Fastex buckles. And we had two types of pistol belts that we were issued that every one of these pouches are attached to. Was the old-fashioned metal button and hook, to where you hooked it in place and you slid it in and pulled it back out to disconnect it, or it was a slide buckle that was like a lighter green. It had a rectangular hole here and a rectangular wedge, and you slid that together and it snapped. And it was a pain to lift and pull apart. So what I did is I took a piece of an old shoelace, tied it through there, which was thin enough to still allow it to close, but I could pull on that shoelace and be able to open up really fast and really easy. This is from the 90s. The magazine pouches are the same. However, you can see a big difference in these pouches. This magazine pouch has two little pockets with snaps for grenades. Especially after I got out of the Army, I didn't have access to grenades anymore. And so I went ahead and removed the grenade loops. I'm going to call them loops. They're not really pockets per se. It was just a place where you stuck your grenade. And I removed those and made them much more streamlined, because these, when they don't have grenades in them, they will snag on briar and twigs and other things like that. And as a scout, you definitely didn't want that stuff. And so I had two sets of LBE. One set for inspections I kept in the barracks, and the other I kept in a storage unit that I had went to the surplus stores and bought everything. And I did configure my field LBE with 4 magazine pouches. Officially, we were supposed to have the pistol belt, 2 magazine pouches, 2 canteens with canteen pouches, and a first aid pouch. That was the official configuration. This is much more beyond that. We were also issued 2 types of suspenders, one of which was a Y suspender, that you had these 2 coming down like this, and then up here you had 1 strap coming down wide out to connect to the pistol belt, and that got tangled very easily. So some guys were actually issued, you know, very good shape H harnesses from the NAM era, and those were much preferred than these. I was issued a Y harness, and I purchased from a surplus store the H harness for that, and they perform much better. The way I have this configured, like I said, it was almost all this stuff was from the 90s, and the harness I have here was one of the aftermarket 1990s H harnesses. And what I did is I made a quick disconnect system with Fastex buckles, so if I needed to get these things off of me, I could do so very, very quickly. And they are connected with a hook and a snap closure to the pistol belt or to the eyelets that are on the magazine pouches. And right there is where they connect. And I also added a sternum strap that kept it from sliding down, and it worked very well. Now, there is a series of books, I'll show you a picture of those here in a minute, called the Ranger Digest. And I never saw them when I was in the United States Army. As a matter of fact, it's probably, they started producing them after I got out. But I discovered them afterwards, and they are hacks, tips, tricks to make the Ranger's life a whole lot better, a whole lot easier, and a whole lot more practical as far as tricks and hacks, how to customize your kit to work better than what the Army Corps of Engineers designed them to be. And so that's where I got a lot of the hacks that I've got on here, is from that series of books. You go ahead and open this up so you can see the pad system I have. Now what I did, the first one I had, I actually took one of the ISO mats, the round where you roll them up, sleep pads, and made an interior pad system, because the Alice clips, which attach everything to the belt, those can actually dig into your skin pretty easily. And so I made one of those, and I used 550 cord to attach the pad to the belt. And I've replaced the 550 cord idea with zip ties, because we didn't have access to zip ties back then. If they existed, I didn't know anything about them, and neither did the people that wrote the Ranger Digest. So all of my pouches are connected with zip ties and the Alice clips, because the Alice clips were notorious for popping loose. And if you had something like your compass pouch, which only had a single Alice clip on it, if that came off, you lost it. And so when I was in the Army, we actually used paracord to tie through those. And I later found out that's one of the hacks that they put in to the Ranger Digest. So that's the basic configuration. But here I have my compass, my Lensthetic compass, and that is USGI issue, still works beautifully. And I prefer using this to just about any of the modern compasses that I have. I'm used to it, it works well, and it's incredibly robust. It can definitely take a beating and still do what it's supposed to do without breaking. So I've got the compass pouch there. I have a magazine pouch, which this was from the later period with the Berettas. It's a 9mm pouch, but it fits a multi-tool beautifully. And so I have that there, just on the inside of each one of the magazine pouches. Each one of my magazine pouches has 3 M16 magazines. These are all 30 rounders. We had access to the 20 rounders as well, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And my other pouches, I think I'm going to go ahead and remove the grenade loops on both of these as well. I just hadn't gotten around to it yet. On this one, I have some paracord, and this is actually from an actual real Army parachute. My buddy, he was Special Forces, he would always cut a bunch of these off his parachute whenever they deployed airborne. I've got some wet ones, and these are primarily to remove camo stick and a camo compact. This is actually the last camo compact I actually used when I was in the Army. And so you're going to be seeing this in use in a future video. And I also have a little waterproof container. I've got some Gorilla tape here. I've got some 1,000-mile-an-hour tape, the Army green tape, and in one side I have an emergency sewing kit for heavy-duty stuff like backpacks, things like that. And on this side I have, let's see if I can get that out of there, I have USGI issue olive drab steel wire tripwire. Yeah, so those are the things I've got in that pouch, which I've converted into a general purpose pouch. And in the other general purpose pouch, I have a bug net, I have small compression bandages and a standard compression bandage, a cravat or sling. This is half of one of these is what I make a do-rag out of, and I have a tourniquet. These items were all from the time period when I was in, but of course the tourniquet is not. And so what I did is with this, I just made my version of an IFAK with it, and it's minimal, but it works. On the round, oh, don't want to forget that. I will probably need that tonight. Now, canteen pouches. There is a pocket on the side for water purification tablets. When I was in, I had a bottle of iodine tablets I kept in one, and in the others I kept a pouch of storm matches. And each one of these, there is a canteen cup and a canteen. When I was in, they didn't exist when I was in, the little canteen cup stoves. Now the interesting thing about this particular canteen cup is it is one of the L-handled ones, and you had two types. Let's see, this one's really springy, so you have to work to get it closed, and which is sort of hilarious. And just see how nice and shiny that is. The other one is a newer variation with butterfly handles. So these right here, yeah, they move all over the place. There's a couple hacks that I've seen to where you can actually use those, put those over the fire, but that right there is just a whole lot easier to drink from. I'm going to pull this in real quick, and I want you to read the bottom of this particular canteen cup. Okay, there we have it. You see the date on that? But to have a 1945 canteen cup that's in this good a condition, what a find. That was one of my finds and deals. And but those are all that I have in the canteen pouches. The canteen pouches actually can be used and were actually used during Vietnam by Navy SEALs and Force Recon as magazine pouches. So you had rapid grab and go magazines through these pouches, and I guess they worked really well. I think they held five magazines. And then the last thing that I've got on the suspender is the only real first aid kit that we had with us on our person. The Marines had a fantastic first aid kit. It was in a box, fantastic, everything you need in there. If you wanted a boo-boo kit, you had to carry that in your cargo pocket, because this is it. This is all that you had. It was a compression bandage, and that's it. That was your IFAK for the United States Army when I was in, and that always was in the upper left shoulder or chest, and that's always where it stayed, because everyone had it in a uniform location. And I got a carabiner with a little 550 cord to where I could hang my pack or something like that around a tree if I desired. Now this is the complete set of the Ranger Digest booklets that I mentioned earlier. I have a video reviewing these, and I was fortunate enough to be able to get an entire set of these. Now I had a couple of them already I was able to find, but I found someone that was selling the entire set, including the booklet that had warning and operation orders, things like that. It's a fantastic supplemental book, very similar to the notes books that Joe Dolio has in his series of books I just posted a video on, and the Tactical Wisdom series. But if you can find these are absolutely wonderful. Yeah, they're not great illustrations, but the information that is in these, if you are using old school equipment, this thing is actually packed with all kinds of hacks that you can use with the older equipment. All the stuff I'm talking about on this series of old school gear and uniform stuff, these books you can use with all of that. Now, like I said, if you can find those, you're very lucky. But if you cannot, that's okay, because you could get these from Amazon. This is the Ranger Digest, the complete Ranger Digest, first half, which is volumes 1 through 5. And then this one is 6 through 9. That has actually been updated and revised. And unfortunately, this is the thing that really drives me nuts, is that there is no index whatsoever. And there is no index to the original ones either. You just sort of have to go and look through it and say, oh wow, that looks interesting, I'll try that. But you would have to use some type of like a post-it flag and label that if you want to save for quick reference any particular article that's in these. So they're hard to navigate, but if you take a few minutes, you can get it to where you can get quick and ready access to the pages you're looking for future reference. Anyway, these are the books I was telling you about. These are the books I got some of my ideas from my LBE, and if you're interested in these, I will put links to these in the description box below. This was my nostalgia AR-15A1 build. I built this to where it would look exactly like the M16A1 that I carried when I was in. And for all intents and purposes, it does look exactly like it, minus, of course, the sling. Now, when I first got out of the Army, I did not want this great big, ugly, triangle-handled monster. I wanted an AR-15 carbine. And two reasons. One of which, I remember seeing pictures of the XM-177 that they carried in Vietnam, the NCOs, officers, and elite forces. That was pretty awesome. It was tiny. It had a collapsible shoulder stock. It was really cool. But then, when we were going to Gowan Field, Idaho for a month-long field problem, we landed at Melton Home Air Force Base. And in the hangar, which we were staying until we went to the field, there were Air Force MPs carrying Colt Commandos, which are teeny tiny. 10.5-inch barrel from about right there. Collapsible shoulder stock can collapse into like here. They were tiny. And I was thinking, you know what? For a scout in the woods, that would be fantastic. And so I went down that route. I've had several carbines. I built several carbines, and pistols, but I wanted one of these again. So I went to Knob Creek Machine Gun Shoot. They had a fantastic gun show there as well. You name it, anything you need. If you need a special cotter pin for a Bren light machine gun, you could find it there, and find a whole bunch of them there. Anything that you would want or need involving firearms or militaria, they sell it there. So I was able to find a complete M16 upper minus the bolt carrier group. Everything else was there. minus the triangular handguard. So it was the gas tube, the barrel, front sight post, forward assist, all that stuff was there. All I had to do was get the triangular handguards, bolt carrier group, charging handle, and the back sight was sort of boogered up. So I replaced that, and then I had to purchase a lower receiver, which at the time I built this is like a really long time ago now, there wasn't a whole lot out on the market as far as lower receivers go. So I wound up going with the new kids on the block, which, let's see, there we go. Hopefully that'll zoom in there so you can see it. Yeah, it's a Bushmaster. So at that time, that's where people went to if they were serious about building their own AR whatever. And they were rock solid. Now, I mean, you can get this stuff anywhere to build, except the A1 stuff. The A1 stuff is as scarce as hen's teeth. So I really lucked out by being able to find this old M16 upper, and then of course I had to kit it all out with the A1 handguard, A1 shoulder stock, which is shorter than an A2, and the sling that I have on this is from Spectre Gear, and this is somewhat similar to the sling that I actually jerry-rigged for my M16A1 when I was in the Army, because we don't want the little sling swivel making noise. So I tied paracord around that, and this one back here doesn't move. So what I did is I tied 550 cord around here, all the way around, up here, all the way around, and I used my regular rifle sling to tie into that. Whenever we were going on patrols, I would usually just take the sling completely off and not have any sling on it whatsoever, because I did not want the sling to snag on anything and give my position away. But when I did have a sling in the field, that was the configuration I made if we were going to be there for any period of time, and I could get away with it. Other than that, you know, first sergeant sees it, he wants to know what you've done to his rifle, and so you'd have to reconfigure it the way you normally did. But anyway, this is my nostalgia build, and of course I have my favorite patrolling magazine, which is the 20 round, and it's just smaller. You can lay in a prone position with this much easier. And you're thinking, wow, what's the difference? Oh my gosh, I mean, you're sacrificing 10 rounds of ammunition, you know. But the thing is, if you really need to get low, you know, 3.5 to 4 inches, that's a big difference. And so I would usually have one of these in for my standard patrol, and you know, my magazine pouch is filled with these. That's what I did. You can, you know, debate with me all you want what's better in the description box. It's really moot. It doesn't matter to me, because that's what I did, not necessarily what I do now. But with a lot of my old school stuff, if you'll be able to see this okay, come into focus please. Okay, I have all kinds of these Colt 20 round and 30 round magazines that for some reason or another just did not want to stay where they were, and they volunteered to come with me. But this is my favorite rifle to carry around in the woods. Now you're probably thinking about that last statement I made. You're like, why in the world is that your favorite rifle to carry through the woods? This is like, it's like ancient. You might as well be carrying a flintlock. Well, I'll tell you what, I love carrying my flintlocks through the woods too. In a lot of ways for the same reasons. The balance of this rifle, it is so lightweight and so well balanced it just feels like an extension of me when I'm moving through the woods. And I love the iron sights. Absolutely love them. Matter of fact, when I was sighting in some of my optics, red dots and stuff, over at Armed and Ready, or excuse me, On Guard Defense, we sighted all the iron sights in first, and then we went to the optics. And I shot a whole lot better with the iron sights than I did with the optics. And the guy, you know, supervisor range, is like, you learned on iron sights, didn't you? I said, oh yeah. And so I'm really used to these sights. The weight, the balance, everything is fantastic. I actually have a couple AR-15 pistols that I've built that's heavier than this. You put all the bells and whistles on a heavier weight barrel, and yeah, they're actually heavier than this. So that's why this is my favorite rifle to carry through the woods. If you toughed it out this long, thank you. I really appreciate you tolerating my self-indulgent stroll down memory lane. If you happen to be an old vet like me, older, you know, not quite so old, it doesn't matter. If you are now considered vintage and the equipment and uniforms that you used to wear and use are now vintage, I want to hear from you in the comments. I want to hear how you would configure certain things, what you would carry in your load-bearing equipment. Is there any particular things you would carry in your pockets, and which pockets those would be? I want all the details. And if by any chance you would like to assemble your own vintage rig, this stuff it's out there. Not as abundantly as it used to, and there's some of the pieces that are now considered collectible. So certain websites, certain vendors sell those things at a premium price, and where, you know, some local mom and pop surplus stores, you can get the stuff for, you know, a fraction of the cost they're selling for the collectability. And the same thing, a lot of the stuff, it could be dirty, clean it up, it works great. And as I said earlier, this stuff right here, it's not high speed, it's not low drag, it's not Gucci, but if this is what you have, with the hard times we could be facing, this is more than acceptable to be able to use in a world without rule of law scenario. You practice with this the same as you would anything else, and this will provide you what you need when you need it. So, there you have it, folks. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.